"You do not belong here, ma'am." The words sliced through the hotel air, sharp and loud. A few guests in gowns paused mid-step. One chuckled softly. Another held up her phone, already filming. The older woman at the entrance gripped her small cloth, clutch with both hands. Her blouse fluttered gently in the wind from the revolving door. She looked past the guard toward the golden ballroom lights. Her eyes blinked twice, then stillness. Behind her, a black car idled, its window rolled halfway down. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. Her name was Helen Whitaker, 63 years old. And most days she wore the same soft gray flats she had owned for nearly a decade. The soles curved just right for walking. She lived in a modest home with her husband Charles on the quieter side of the city. A creaky porch, wind chimes by the front window, and a climbing rose that never quite bloomed the way she hoped. Still, she loved it. Helen had once been a librarian. 37 years of card catalogs, whispering school kids, and the sweet smell of books when the heat kicked in. She retired 5 years ago, but the local children still waved when they saw her on the street. She was not loud, not glamorous, but there was a steadiness to her. A grace that came from years of listening instead of speaking, noticing instead of needing to be noticed. Charles was different, quiet like her, but known far beyond their neighborhood. He had spent the last 3 decades designing clean, dignified buildings that let in light and kept out noise. Architects knew his name, city planners called him for advice. But in every speech, he thanked Helen first. They met at a campus coffee shop. He spilled tea on her sleeve. She offered him a napkin and a smile. Since then, every cup of tea reminded him of that moment. Tonight was supposed to be about his latest achievement, a major civic building unveiled downtown, the kind of project that draws headlines and donors. The firm had rented out the Grand Astoria, a luxury hotel wrapped in golden trim and crystal chandeliers. He had begged her to come. "Just for a little while," he said. "Say hello, let them see you." Helen was not used to rooms like that, but she agreed. She wanted to stand beside him, even if no one else noticed her. She took the bus. Her preferred way, always. She hated being a bother. She wore her nicest blouse, pale blue with a hand-sewn collar, a long gray skirt that moved like mist when she walked. She pinned her mother's brooch just above her heart. She checked her reflection at the bus stop, smoothed her hair, practiced her smile. When she stepped off downtown, the Grand Astoria glowed like something out of a movie. Fancy cars lined the drive. Guests stepped out in silks and tailored suits. She took a breath, stepped forward. The lobby door opened before her. The air inside smelled of roses and money. A marble floor stretched wide beneath a golden chandelier. She saw the registration table. A young woman with perfect nails sat behind it, holding a list. Helen smiled softly. "Good evening. My name is Helen Whitaker. I am here for the celebration." The girl's eyes flicked up, then down to the list. Her smile was different, tight, unsure, and that was when everything began to change. The girl behind the table hesitated. She glanced again at the list, then back at Helen's face. "I am sorry. You are not on here." Helen blinked, still smiling. "Oh, that is all right. My husband is Charles Whitaker. He asked me to meet him here." The name made the girl pause. Her posture shifted, but still. She shook her head. "If you are not on the list, I cannot let you in." A man in a black suit appeared, tall and serious. A gold badge on his jacket read, "Security Director, Monsieur Sloan." He looked Helen up and down without a word. Guests bustled behind her, laughter, heels clicking, champagne flutes clinking. She stepped aside politely, but stayed close to the table. The girl tried not to look embarrassed. The guard, however, looked bothered. He asked her sharply, "Do you have an invitation? A badge? A name tag?" Helen replied gently, "No, I do not. My husband is already inside. I just came from home." He scoffed under his breath. "Ma'am, this is a private event. Guests only." Several people nearby turned to look. A woman in a green satin dress leaned toward her date and whispered something. He laughed quietly. Helen offered a soft smile. "Could I just wait here by the wall? I do not want to cause trouble." That is when the guard's voice changed. It got louder, firmer. "No, ma'am. You cannot wait here. You are blocking the entrance." Helen's hands tightened on her clutch. She looked toward the ballroom doors. "But they were shut. I could call my husband. He is expecting me." The man shook his head. "If you were expected, you would be on the list." His tone was final. Another couple stepped past her into the lobby, glancing at Helen like she was lost luggage. The young receptionist bit her lip, then looked down at her screen. The guard crossed. "His arms! Please step outside, ma'am." Helen's cheeks flushed. The wind from the door brushed her blouse again. "I can just wait right here." "No. Outside. Now." She did not argue. She never did. She turned and stepped back through the revolving door out into the chill of the evening. Inside, the lights shimmered. Laughter rose again. Behind her, no one followed. But down by the curb, the black car was still there, engine purring. Someone was inside watching quietly. A hand reached for a phone, and somewhere far beyond the glass doors, Charles was still speaking. "Where are you watching from today? Comment below. I would truly love to know." Helen stood just outside the doors, next to a low stone planter filled with ornamental grasses. She faced the fountain, as if she had come to admire it. The water danced under soft lights, casting moving shadows on the ground. She folded her arms gently across her chest. The wind had picked up. Her pale blue blouse rippled against her skin. Behind the tall glass doors, guests continued arriving. One woman glanced at Helen, then whispered something to her husband, who did not look. Helen shifted slightly, stepping back into the shadows near a tree. Her mother's brooch glinted faintly under the street lamp. From inside, she could hear the faint swell of music. A saxophone, maybe. Laughter. Applause. A valet hurried past her, slowed down, looked back. He whispered something to the security guard. "Is she all right? Should we—" The guard shook his head. "Just keep it moving." Helen took out her phone. A small flip model, the kind she liked. Simple, just for calls. She stared at it, then closed it gently without dialing. She did not want to embarrass him. She looked back at the lobby. The same guard was standing tall, arms crossed. She took a slow breath and approached again. The doors opened automatically as she neared. But before she could speak, he stepped forward and blocked her path. His voice was sharp this time, and loud enough for others to hear. "Ma'am, we have asked you to leave." She looked up at him, eyes soft but steady. "I am not trying to sneak in. My husband is Charles Whitaker. The man raised a hand. "I do not care who you say you are. We have an image to maintain here." Helen blinked once, then stepped back. The young receptionist inside shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Her eyes met Helen's for a moment, then dropped. A couple near the check-in desk turned and stared. The woman pulled her shawl tighter. Helen said nothing more. She moved away from the doors, her steps quiet, almost soundless. She found a bench beneath a tree, sat down slowly, the cold settled in her bones. She pulled her skirt tighter over her knees. Above her, the street lamp flickered. Across the drive, the black car's door opened. A slim woman stepped out in a long black dress. Her heels clicked softly as she walked to the edge of the sidewalk. held her phone to her ear, her voice low but urgent. Inside the car, a driver waited, still watching Helen from the mirror. Helen sat still. She was not crying, but her face had changed, softer somehow, like old parchment touched by light. People kept arriving. The laughter never stopped, but the woman in the black dress turned, eyes narrowing at the hotel doors. Then she began walking briskly toward them. Something was shifting. Though no one knew it yet, the silence was almost over. Inside the ballroom, the lights had dimmed slightly. A large screen displayed Charles Whitaker's latest civic design. Clean lines, wide windows, a place built to welcome everyone. He stood at the front of the room, finishing his remarks. And none of this, he said, would have been possible without the person who keeps me balanced, steady, and clear-eyed every day. He glanced toward the back of the room. She should be here by now. He checked his phone beneath the podium. Nothing. No message, no missed call. Just the time, ticking later than it should be. He cleared his throat and closed the speech quietly. Polite applause filled the room. As the music resumed and guests turned toward hors d'oeuvres and cocktails, Charles stepped away from the crowd and moved swiftly through the side door. The executive assistant, her name was Evelyn, met him in the corridor. She looked unsettled. "Charles, I think something has happened." She spoke in a hushed tone. She had seen it. From the car. Through the window. The older woman turned away at the door, the security chief raising his voice, the embarrassment. Charles's face did not change, but his pace quickened. They passed the lobby and reached the tall glass entrance. And there she was, Helen, sitting quietly beneath the tree, hands folded in her lap. The fountain lights behind her made her look like something eternal. Charles walked to the doors. Evelyn followed, close. He stepped outside. The moment the doors opened, the guard turned, still firm, still standing tall. "Sir, can I help?" Charles raised one hand, gently. "That woman is my wife." The security chief paused. "The librarian-looking one?" Charles's voice did not rise. "My name is Charles Whitaker. This is my event." The words spread like a ripple in still water. The receptionist at the desk froze. Guests behind the glass stopped mid-conversation. Evelyn stepped forward, speaking with calm precision. She confirmed everything, told them what she saw, what she heard. The guard's face shifted, just slightly. "Sir, we did not know." She did not have credentials. You shouted at her. You humiliated her, and you did not care to listen. The manager arrived then, breathless and pale. He had already heard. Evelyn spoke again, even and professional. "This cannot be how you treat people. Not here. Not ever." Charles looked at the bench where Helen still sat, not yet noticing what was unfolding. She looked so small out there, but somehow still the center of everything. He turned back to the guard. "Please call someone to take your place. You are dismissed for the evening." The man opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Charles stepped outside fully, walking slowly to Helen. She looked up. Her expression changed. Not relief, not even surprise, just warmth. He held out his hand. "Come inside, my love." She rose without a word, her hand resting lightly in his. Together they walked through the lobby, and all at once the hotel fell silent. "What would you do if you saw this happen? Speak up or stay silent." Charles led Helen through the tall doors, his hand gently resting on hers. Their footsteps echoed against the marble as the hotel lobby went still. The sound of conversation dropped. The receptionist stood up, her mouth parted as if to speak, but she did not. Helen kept her chin slightly lowered, not out of shame but quiet strength. Her steps were steady. As they passed the check-in table, the woman who had laughed earlier touched her necklace and looked away. Inside the ballroom, heads turned. Charles opened the doors himself. A line of servers paused mid-tray. Helen entered. With him, wrapped in the same soft blouse and long gray skirt she had worn on the bus. Nothing had changed, except now the entire room saw her. Charles spoke calmly to the event coordinator, who rushed to the side of the room. The hotel manager reappeared quickly, eyes wide, voice full of apology. "Please, sir, we are so sorry. We had no idea." Charles held up one hand. "What matters now is how you fix this." The security chief was nowhere to be seen. Evelyn had already taken care of that. A new staff member now stood at the entrance. The young employee who had earlier looked uncomfortable. His eyes met Helen's, and this time, he nodded gently. One of the board members approached nervously. He whispered something about the media possibly finding out. Charles looked at him plainly. If they do, they will hear the truth. Another woman stepped forward, middle-aged, wearing a wine-colored dress. She had seen it all. She cleared her throat. "I'm ashamed," she said. "I saw what happened, and I did nothing. I am so sorry." Helen looked at her. "You are not the only one." The woman nodded. Her lip trembled. Charles turned toward the stage. He stepped up without microphone or spotlight. His voice carried easily. This evening was meant to celebrate buildings. But no building matters more than the people who walk through its doors. He turned to Helen. "This is Helen, my wife. The quiet force behind every design, every deadline, every idea I have ever had. She never asks for attention, but she is the reason any of this exists." There was silence. Then someone clapped, then 2, then 10. Soon the room was filled with applause, not loud, not wild, but slow and real. Helen stood still in the center of it all. The brooch on her blouse caught the light like a badge. She did not bow, she did not cry, she smiled, soft and true. In one corner, a woman who had filmed the earlier scene quietly lowered her phone. She looked down at it for a long moment, then deleted the video. No one asked her to, but something inside her had shifted. Helen stood with her hands gently folded. No one was laughing now. 3 days later, Helen passed the Grand Astoria again. She was on her way to the second-hand bookstore, the one tucked between the bakery and the little post office with the creaky door. The hotel looked different now. Not the building itself, the same golden trim, the same arched windows, but something subtler, softer. Near the front entrance, just beside the glass revolving door, a new sign had been placed on a silver stand. "All guests deserve dignity." She paused and read it twice. The young employee who had stood silent that night now stood by the door in a pressed new jacket. He saw her and smiled, the kind that says, "I remember." He stepped aside and gently opened the door, even though she was not going in. Helen nodded, a simple gesture, full of grace. Then she continued down the sidewalk. The day was breezy and cool, and her skirt moved lightly with each step. The brooch was still pinned above her heart. At home, Charles had set the kettle on for tea. He greeted her at the door, holding out her favorite vanilla blend. There was something about the way he looked at her, like he always had, with wonder. He handed her a small folded note from Evelyn. Inside, it read, "They are inviting you to speak at next month's training. Not because you are a victim, but because you made them see. I hope you will come." Helen sat down by the window, the tea warm in her hands. She looked out at the yard, where the rose vine still had not bloomed. But it was reaching higher now, trying again. She thought about the ballroom, the hush of the crowd, the sound of that single, growing applause. She thought about how many times in life she had been overlooked, in shops, at banks, even in small conversations where others interrupted and talked over her, but not that night, not anymore. She would go to the training, not to lecture, just to be there. To stand quietly, like always, and remind them what real presence feels like. Later, Charles joined her at the window. He rested his hand over hers. "You changed something," he said. She smiled. "Not really. I just stayed who I was." They sat like that for a long time. In the days that followed, the story did not go viral. No headlines, no outrage online. But inside the hotel, policies shifted. Uniforms were retrained, and a small plaque was added beneath the new sign, inspired by the grace of one guest. Helen never asked for credit. She never mentioned the incident again. But when she walked downtown, past doors that had once closed to her, people began to see her, not as invisible, not as decoration, but as a woman of quiet strength. And that, more than anything, was enough.